You know, these titles for these videos just keep getting juicier, and I'm getting more and more roped into this. Diablo 4 was embarrassed by Path of Exile again. Now, you see, I've been pretty positive, actually, about Diablo 4 recently. I thought Season 4 was pretty good. I thought the Season 5 PTR could use some upgrades and some changes, and I thought the Spiritborn reveal was pretty good. So I was surprised to see, after the Spiritborn reveal, and then we had the Path of Exile reveal as well, there started to be some criticisms related to the reveal. I'm assuming that's where this one is going, but we're going to find out. Let's see what Alex Gaming has to say today.
So I really wanted to wait a couple of days before making this video. I know a lot of people ran out and decided to give their hot takes immediately after both GGG and Blizzard showcased what they were working on.
A lot of hot takes.
I really wanted to ruminate and think about what actually happened, because when I saw what Blizzard was doing and what they were actually trying to show, I was incredibly confused. And the thing is, I wasn't confused about the new class with D4 and the expansion. I was confused at how Diablo and the Blizzard team are really trying to present anything that comes along with this game. And
okay, he's probably going to go into the marketing of it and the way that they actually talked about it. I would have to assume, and we'll find out here in a moment, but I have to assume he's going to talk about how they kind of talked about lore before they showed gameplay and all that, right?
That's really where I'm sort of like having a hard time understanding what Blizzard is trying to do and what the Diablo team is trying to do.
They're
so
trying
let me just
to
try to explain what I mean.
Tell you right now what they're trying to do. They're trying to drive hype around the expansion. The expansion's coming out in October. Season 5 is basically filler until then, and they're on a full press release. That's why they flew 1 million people to go test it out. They're promoting their expansion. That's exactly what they're trying to do.
About this. From the time the actual stream started, not the pre-stream, to when they actually showcased the Spiritborn class, the time frame between that was 28 minutes.
Okay, that's a pretty good point. I remember when I was watching the review, I was pretty hyped about it because obviously I liked Spiritborn. Actually, I was pretty positive about Spiritborn. We only got to play level 30, but I was pretty positive about Spiritborn. I did see quite a bit of feedback in my chat related to this, and people being like, okay, come on, like they're talking about lore, they're talking about animations, like we just want to see the class today. It was a little bit feet draggy in the beginning.
Out of a 1 hour live stream. Now I'm saying it's an hour because I cut out the half-hour pre-stream beforehand. So half the live stream was actually dedicated to the artwork of the Spiritborn and what that class is, and really almost this self-filleting, aggrandizing thing about what they've been working on with D4 and this class. I feel like what they did was try and provide and show you the best reason why they made this class rather than just trying to make the paladin. And that...
Okay, to be honest though, like I understand that. They did want to explain why they went this way over the paladin. Everyone's asking for a paladin. It is sort of the elephant in the room. I don't really blame them for addressing why they went with the Spiritborn, because this is a question that's been asked a million times. But I do completely agree with him that they did take quite a bit of time to get past the animation.
Really was the worst way to go about things. If you look at Path of Exile 2, and when they present any class there directly, it is literally in the first minute you understand exactly what is going on and what they're trying to show you, and it is gameplay immediately of that class. And that's the part that's incredibly concerning to me. I feel like a lot of what Blizzard and the Diablo team are doing are more likely just trying to showcase why they're making these decisions, why they're making these classes, why they're doing what they're doing, instead of actually just doing things the player base actually wants. It feels like they're just trying to explain to you why they think they're right, rather than actually doing the thing that the players want in the first place. Because honestly,
I don't think it's that serious. Like I don't think making Spiritborn needed like a faux stream of them. Like, here's why we made the Spiritborn, not the paladin. They could just make the Spiritborn. If they just want to make a new class and have it be Spiritborn, I don't think it's that big of a deal. There's going to be people that are like, I want the paladin, and those people will be upset. I don't think they have to go on an apology tour or explain themselves. I think the Spiritborn's actually a pretty fun class. I think most people, when they get their hands on it, will like it. There's people that want the Paladin. I don't think it's that big of a deal that they decide not to do the Paladin. I guarantee you they're going to do the Paladin at some point. I think they're saving that one because when people start screaming, we want a Paladin, they were already literally probably working on this class already. And then they're just like, okay, we're going to make the Paladin for the next expansion. God knows they're going to do more than one expansion. Let's be honest. Diablo's not in the game yet, so it's probably Mephisto. Then maybe the next expansion's Diablo or you know, one of the other primes or something. So more than likely, it's coming with another expansion, if I had to guess.
Honestly, looking into this class, it's nothing more than a reskinned monk from Diablo 3 with spirit aspects. And that's really disappointing, actually, because the thing is they could have really done something different and new if they wanted to go in that direction. Or they could have given everybody what they actually wanted, which was a new twist on the paladin. Maybe even like a Dark Knight or a Death Knight would have been even better than that.
Okay, so for the sake of argument, if we're going to talk about that, I think Blood Knight, they actually added Blood Knight into Diablo Immortal out of all things, and it kind of fits the vibe. I think it would have fit the theme pretty well, honestly, of Lilith and all that. I thought Blood Knight would be pretty cool. In fact, way back before the launch of D4, when we were talking about there was going to be another class in the game, because they were actually sort of, people were trying to figure out what all the classes were, and there was like a cup that had all the classes plus a Lilith icon on it, and so people were guessing what it was, and my guess was it was a Blood Knight, because the Blood Knight was coming to Immortal. They had the scenes of like Lilith coming back with blood, so I think a Blood Knight actually could have been pretty cool in my own personal opinion. But for the sake of argument, yeah, a Blood Knight could have been pretty cool. But I'm not really upset they added the Spiritborn. I don't think it's like that big of a deal.
But the thing is, they chose not to do that. The fact that the Sword and Board class is missing from the D4 catalog, and the fact that they're basically doing this like Druid Light with Monk kind of a thing with a Witch Doctor mixed in, really doesn't showcase well at all. And when we talk,
it doesn't really feel like a druid, to be fair. I play a lot of druid. I played the Spiritborn. It doesn't really feel like a druid. Maybe I could see the argument Jaguar feels a little bit like a monk, like it's dashes and punches and stuff. Okay, you got me there. I could understand that. But I don't really see druid too much in it, other than the fact that there's like animos in relation to the class.
Talk about showcasing. That's another issue that I'm seeing with this as well. You see, the problem is they started talking about like your basic generators, then your spenders, then your ultimates, and they really didn't go into anything else more deeper than that. They talked about it with, each type of spirit that you have, whether it's the hawk or the gorilla or the centipede and even the jaguar, which all seem incredibly cool, but there was nothing being shown that says, hey, here's a cool way that you can build upon these specific things. Here are skills that you can build upon each specific way. Here's ways that you can combine these sort of spirits and then create these new and exciting types of classes. Now, yes, they did touch on that just a little bit near the end of the stream, and they showcased a really great photo of how you could possibly do that.
Yeah, this is what's going to be my counter. They do kind of get into this a little bit. Plus, they did fly 4 different content creators there to live stream it to show gameplay footage afterwards, which they relied on that a little bit. And they gave us a chance to fly down and record it so we could post a bunch of footage. I don't think the live stream review itself necessarily needed literally all of it, because there's quite a bit of footage elsewhere. But I do understand this point about gameplay. Like maybe it could have been a little bit earlier, and I get that.
They didn't show anything in game or in practice. And that's what really upsets me about this sort of presentation. It was an entire hour of all the developers basically just talking about themselves and what they've done and how they're going to do things, rather than just showcasing the actual character and the gameplay itself. And
I don't mind the art. I think what maybe it was the timing of it could have been a little better. Maybe they show the gameplay, all the skills and all that first, then they talk about the art, etc. I agree with that. Probably would have been a little better received. However, I don't mind that they did take the time to talk about the art, to introduce themselves, and I'm one of the people that actually appreciates that. There was an exclusive dev interview when I was down there, and literally my questions were about art and sound design and things like that. There are people that are interested in this kind of stuff. Again, I do think it's a well-taken point that it took them 28 minutes to get past that point to get into the gameplay, but I don't think that it's a problem that in and of itself existed within that live stream.
Honestly, the way they showcased it with those very basic skills and just talking about things in a very linear fashion basically showed that it's not going to be an exciting class to play or even fun. To be honest, the best person who showcased that class was Raxentrax when he talked about, look at what this class can do. Look at the centipede. Look at this damage. He had a better presentation and a better showcasing of what that class can actually do in a real live set.
Yeah, I think that's why they did it, though. Like, I think this is sort of part of it. They literally link off to everyone right after, and then they show it. So it's like, yeah, you're right. Our boy down here, Mr. Blue Hoodie, had the best gameplay representation, but that was also a Blizzard move. Like, they did actually fly everyone there for this, and they set this up there so we could actually have this. So do they do they not get credit for also showing the gameplay footage directly after live? That's one question I would have if we're going to debate this, is if we're upset about them not showing the gameplay footage, are we also equally as like, hey, thumb up, good move by having these guys in the community like Rax, who sends lots of feedback and does build guides, etc. Shouldn't they equally get a thumbs up for providing this, I'm assuming?
Setting rather than what the developers were talking about during the actual presentation. Everything from this showcase of Diablo 4 was more about the devs, was more about Blizzard, and was more about what they think is right rather than just showcasing how the class is actually worth playing or getting people excited about it in the first place. The design of the set, miking up people, having conversations, trying to do this fireside chat kind of a deal as if we're investors or employees of Blizzard rather than just showcasing the actual gameplay of the new class. Everything from these weird panning camera angles to just this giant set behind them.
I think we are reaching a little bit here. I don't think I had too much of an issue with the camera angles. I don't mind that they had a big set. This was a billion-dollar company, still is, because they're now acquired by Microsoft, etc. They have the resources to do these big sets. I don't think that in and of itself was an issue. I do still agree that more gameplay in the official live stream would have been good, but I do think we're reaching a little far here to like throw kind of some like, they shouldn't be doing this and for almost no reason. I'm trying to understand the point here.
Changing all the spirit icons every time they talked about something. Nothing felt organic. Nothing felt like they cared. Nothing felt like it was going to be something that people wanted to get excited about. And when you compare that to Path of Exile, it's a vastly different scope. And you can see the vast chasm of difference between GGG and Blizzard and how they are operating their games. Just look at the new league for Path of Exile 1 coming out this week. Everything was showcased quickly, efficiently, and easily to understand and digest. And
I can't argue this point because the GGG somehow for a league manages to have so much content that this was a 44-minute reveal, and the dude didn't shut up the entire time, nonstop, and all of it was new information, and like 90% of it is like gameplay footage or showcasing it. He's right about this, and this was literally the same day. I think this is why we're getting titles like, I've seen a couple of these videos that have this like D4 was embarrassed by PoE type thing. I think this is why we're seeing this conversation of like direct comparison, is because this was actually at the same day within hours of each other, so people are naturally comparing this. And yeah, I mean, in terms of these reveals, GGG's reveal was much better, but they also had more things to reveal. Like they had tons and tons and tons of things to reveal. The D4 one was only a class reveal only. They didn't talk about the expansion or anything. I'm curious to see when the expansion reveal happens, if it will be a little bit more like this level. But yeah, I don't have an argument for this part.
It left you asking more questions and wanting to go into that league itself. They even showcased a new Ascendancy class. In fact, by removing an old one and bringing in a brand new one, people were thinking, okay, this is cool. I have to see this, because it meant an entire rebalancing of major systems in the melee side that were needed in Path of Exile 1. And for a game that is so incredibly complex like Path of Exile, to easily provide information to its players is so ridiculous when you think about it, because in Diablo 4, it's a much more casual, friendly game, but the information there is presented to you in a very convoluted, confusing, full of ums and uhs kind of a way from the actual developers. So it makes it seem like they don't know what they're doing, when in reality, they probably have a pretty good class that's lined up for them. They had a great thing going with Season 4 when they fixed all the loot, where they fixed all the itemization.
Season 4 was good, yeah.
Now their big issue is trying to add more and new creative ways of actually wanting people to keep playing this game. I made a
the issue is always the same. It's audience retention. They'll bring people back for each season, etc. And Season 4 had the best audience retention by far, and their issue is always going to be the same, but getting people to elongate their playtime. I agree with him there.
That was a pretty hot take that said Diablo 4 has a serious problem, and we talked about the end games there. And a lot of people didn't like that video, and they didn't want to hear the harsh truth. I know Diablo 4 is a much more casual game than PoE. I'm not trying to make D4 into PoE. What I would like, though...
That wouldn't go very well, too, because it's like, I have spent so much time in PoE to realize like these are targeted towards completely different audiences. Diablo 4 is for people that do not have as much time and do not want to get into in-depth as a game. They want to log on, they want to blast through, have a good time, play couch co-op, something, log off. Like these are different demographics entirely.
Is to have D4 have a little bit of complexity. It doesn't have to be Path of Exile for me to be happy. What it needs, though, is a good way of actually enticing new players into the ARPG genre and saying, hey, we can then provide you this way of playing without feeling overwhelmed or anything like that, but still give them the ability to have some depth and character into this game. What PoE 2 does is they show you one skill, then they show you another skill and how those two skills can interchange or interact with each other. Then they start adding and compiling on top of that. So instead of you saying, oh, that's all that it does, what you're looking at is, these are some really wild things of what I can think of already on how I would like this skill to work or how I would like it to perform. And that's the part that is missing from Diablo 4. There's no real theory crafting besides the Paragon board, which is really just pick resistances, pick HP, and go for like a main node. It's all just this oversimplified, dumbed down, no ability of actual thought process whatsoever. Green arrow good, red arrow bad, and then move from there, which unfortunately, if you're going to have that kind of mechanic in the game and you're not going to have that complexity, then the gameplay itself has to be fun and the loop has to be good.
I actually think he's making a very good point. I think Diablo themselves realize that, and I think that's what they're doing. They're probably not going to have the crazy depth that sounds like he wants out of a game like Path of Exile. Having played both, I don't see Diablo 4 ever having that depth. Instead, he's hitting right on the money, which is they're focused on making the game fun for the time that you are going to play it. This is why they like cut down the amount of time it takes level 100. They feel people were getting bored and quitting before that, so they cut that down. They put more minions in it so you can increase the mob density and blast through it. More uber uniques for everybody. They're trying to make it closer to the Castle Crashers, okay? You remember that game from like the Xbox arcade than it is to Path of Exile. They're going the other way, my friend, and they're doing this on purpose. And honestly, it might not be that bad of a decision. I've made plenty of videos in the same style of like, they should do this and they should improve this. The reality is, I think they know their demographic is people that don't play as much. They're going to aim towards that. It's going to be a more casual game, and I think we're going to see it focus more on lighthearted playthrough as the game continues to progress. I don't think they're going to go the other way. They're going closer to Diablo 3 than they are to Path of Exile, and it seems very purposeful. So I think at this point, like, the people who are still playing the game know that. Like, I don't think there's really people 4 or 5 seasons later into it that are, I'm only playing for when the end game arrives. Like, you either enjoy the game at this point or you kind of don't. I don't know how many people are still only playing for the future of the game.
And we didn't get a good gameplay loop until Season 4. And that's the more disheartening thing about this. D4 could be a great game. It could be a great catalyst and a good entry point for people to get into the ARPG genre.
There you go, though. That's what it is. It is an entry point. Like, that's what they're aiming for. They want to be the Omega, like, wide-reaching, grab as many people as possible, test it out. Maybe if you go down the rabbit hole of ARPGs really hard, then you start transferring to some of the other games. But, you know, honestly, an entry point isn't a bad spot for a game to sit. If you are the first game that people play in the genre, that's not too bad.
And then move into things like Last Epoch to be a little bit more complex.
Yeah, exactly.
And then after Last Epoch, they could move into Path of Exile or whatever else comes out in between. Because there's so many different kinds of ways to satiate players in the ARPG genre that really aren't being taken care of.
You know, and to be fair, I feel like D4 bad meta does make it where it kind of perpetuates some of this stuff. Because if we look at this, Last Epoch, in my opinion, in the most recent leagues or something, probably fell off harder than Season 4. I don't know how many people are still super into Last Epoch already and for the new cycle, whereas I think Season 4 of D4 literally lasted longer. But people like Last Epoch. They like the devs. It's a cheaper game. It's an indie game, and they're newer, so it gets a lot more of like, some extra time to like, okay, they give some time to build up. People don't really dunk on it as much. But I mean, honestly, I hate to say it, boys, but like the reality is I actually enjoy Diablo 4 more. And I don't think that that's wrong. Like, I think it's perfectly fine to feel that way. I think there's a lot of people that played Last Epoch and maybe like aren't enjoying it as much as they've seen other people talk about. So I don't know if D4 is really like in that bad of a spot, honestly. I feel like I'm actually decently optimistic about the game. I feel like the game is legitimately going to have an opportunity to get better. I think that my biggest concern before was they didn't really know what direction they're wanting to go. With recent patches and changes to the game, it seems like they do know the direction they want to go, which is much more targeted at less time to play the game, more casual audience, closer to D3. And if that's the way they're going to go, well then, okay, that's fine with me, because at least we can kind of like see a direction in which they choose to go. I don't really see an emergency at the moment. It just is going to be slow progression to get the game built out into what it was, really.
And the fact that the new PoE League was announced just a little bit after the new character class being revealed for D4, people were saying D4 bad again. Because the thing is, Path of Exile doesn't just do one little thing. They completely change the game consistently, almost every 6 months. And the thing is, that's what people are looking for. They want D4 to feel fresh and new and different. And that's kind of what we were promised. Basically, like, bring D2 back into the new era with a new twist.
The D4 is, like, after playing D2, D4 is nothing like D2, and nor is it going to become anything like D2.
But we didn't get that. We got Diablo 3 with a fresh coat of paint. Some people like that. That's great. But I think in the terms of longevity for what this game needs and how it can really provide a player base that wants new things, that wants a deeper mechanic, it's not going to do that. It's really going to be something that people play for about a week or two and then drop off, while Last Epoch and PoE have better cycles and seasons.
Now, I actually think if you get 2 or 3 weeks, let's say you get 2 weeks, okay? I think if you get 2 weeks every season from Diablo 4, they're probably fine with that. They probably are hoping that people will play for 3 weeks, but if every season people come back, they play for 2 weeks in the season, then they go to play something else, that's like kind of fine. And there's this thing that happens in ARPGs that people are always expecting every ARPG to be able to be played infinitely, like it's RuneScape or something. And Path of Exile is the closest to that. D2 is like close to that, but people quit those leagues too. I actually quit Path of Exile. Like, I don't play it all the way through the end of the league. I'll play it for a couple months and I'll go play something else. And that's still the game that people consider has the most content and the most things to do and all that. So it's this concept of like, you have to be able to play air. And I'm saying he's saying that. I'm just saying this is like a concept I've seen a lot. Like, it's okay to play the game and then stop playing the game in a couple weeks. And if you get a good couple weeks of fun enjoyment from the game every league, every season, then you just cycle between all the other ARPGs and you have a good time each one. Like, there's enough to play that you can keep yourself entertained. We don't need the one ARPG that lasts for months.
I know I've trashed D4 a lot in this video. That really isn't my intention. What I want is for Diablo 4 to be a better game than it is right now. What I want is for D4 to have just a little bit of depth that could really bring players into a genre they didn't actually think about before. And to have that small semblance of, here's how we're going to present our information to you the right way so you can get excited about these classes, expansions, and
okay, so here's the thing, though. The Diablo 4, I'm going to give you a real hot take. Diablo 4 has enough depth to bring people into the genre. What it doesn't have enough depth for is to keep people who are now into that genre forever, or people that were already into that genre massively entertained. People that have been playing ARPGs already don't like D4 because it doesn't have enough to keep them entertained. But the words you're saying about, I want it to be good enough to bring people in the genre, I legitimately think that Diablo does a good job at bringing people into ARPGs. Campaign's good. It's simple enough to understand. You really do not get scared through the progression of it. It introduces you to things like unique items, which change the style of the build. The Paragon board has enough complexity in it for like beginner, theory crafters and stuff to feel like they're doing something. It has enough of a challenge at boss fights with things like Lilith, etc. You can start to understand bosses in the RPGs. I actually legitimately do believe that Diablo 4 is a good entry point into ARPGs. I think that is one of the most unfair things we could do to Diablo 4 is be like, it's not that. It is actually like pretty good casual game for the people to learn the ARPGs. It is not enough for people that have been playing ARPGs their whole life or wanted D2 to be satisfied with. However, I agree.
Seasons and not have just developers sitting in a chair explaining things in the most boring, monotone way. It feels like this is more of a job than passion, and you can see the passion in Path of Exile, and you can see the job in Diablo.
I agree with that.
And it's a damn shame. But you know what? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Hopefully I don't make everybody mad about this video, because apparently this is where a lot of my hot takes live, so Definitely want to see what you guys have to say. Now, if you like this kind of content, you want to see more, subscribe. We're on our way to 1,000 subs, and I really do appreciate it. There are more how-to guides coming up, as well as for crafting and endgame mechanics for Last Epoch, and more Path of Exile leagues as well, and more news about the ARPG genre. So if you want to see that, like I said before, go ahead and subscribe. But with all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching.
I'll give you a subscribe.
Have a great one. And I'll see you next time.
Okay, pretty good video. Some things I agree with, some things I didn't agree with. I'll just go through them real quick. I do think that Diablo 4 is legitimately getting better. Call it Copium, call it Blizzard's Last Chance, whatever you want. I legitimately believe that. Season 4, I think, was significantly better. Season 5 hopefully can be saved, because Season 5 looked kind of boring for me with the PTR, but we'll see. Season 6 is going to be the launch with the Spiritborn. I got a chance to play Spiritborn. I actually liked it a lot. I thought the point he made best in the video was that it took them 28 minutes to get into the gameplay and the reveal. The reveal was a little bit dry in terms of excitement to try to hype it up. But to be fair, they also had the gameplay reveal for people to be able to see the gameplay and all that afterwards. I feel like they do get credit for being cool enough to invite the streamers like Raxow, etc., to be able to showcase the gameplay live. That's something we don't see too often, so I think they get thumb up for that. I also do think Diablo 4 legitimately is a good game for an entry point into ARPGs. He made this point during the video, which is that way he wants to see you as a good entry point, but I think it actually does get props for being a good entry point into ARPGs. I don't think it's complicated enough to scare people away. I think it's fast enough to progress through the game that you can play with limited time. I think it has just enough boss fights to start to learn, and if you want to play more into that type of stuff, you can eventually find your way down the ARPG rabbit hole that lots of us did and try in other ARPGs. So I think it does actually hit the mark in terms of entry point to ARPGs, and I think if you can get 2-3 weeks out of most people in each one of those seasons, they're probably pretty happy about that. But I do think he makes a good point that sometimes the reveals can fall a little bit flat, not really as exciting, and the hype itself is something that does be a big driving factor. And I don't have any argument for him about Path of Exile coming out with more content. That legitimately is astounding to me what they are able to do within each league. But I'm not going to shit on Diablo 4 because somebody else manages to come out with more content. I do think they are developing in different ways. I think Diablo 4 is legitimately going more casual. PoE is obviously going more and more and more and more blasty, and I think they're both on purpose doing that. So that's what I see so far. Give the man some love. He had a nice video. I'll see you guys on the next one.